Workhouse Studio, Latent Future is focused on the world where the domestic and workspaces are reunited and are creating ubiquitous environments. In this world, the definition of the space will be much more loose, and the activities and experiences of the daily life will have exceeded the structure that contains them, becoming more fluid, interconnected, and seamless than ever before. The logic that sustains the practice of architecture will be shifted. At the forefront of this shift, there are numerous co-working living spaces that have appeared in the past few years. A Cambrian explosion of the niche co-working living spaces has emerged to serve specific industries, interests, and communities. During this time of critical evaluation and experimentation, co-working living becomes an indicator of the broader shift brought about by developments in technology, changes in the lifestyle, and the rise of the shared economy. This shift becomes a lens to understand how our present moment may impact the future of architecture. Under this hypothesis, this research studio is exploring what the phenomenon of co-work living means for architecture, and how it can serve as a catalyst for a series of mutually beneficial, thoughtfully coordinated pragmatic relationships. We believe that this approach will lead us to a series of new building types, which helps us to envision the future of our living environment today. Following key questions are asked. What is the role of architecture in contemporary collective life? How can architecture catalyze pragmatic relationships that produce value and respond to changing ideals of society? How can we critically engage the economics of architecture? How do sharing economies and changing patterns of habitation impact the way we consider space use and ownership? What is the value of spatial proximity when decentralized communication allows work and life to happen anywhere? How can we address the fragmentation of physical spaces and the emergence of new type of communities? Being in the situation under COVID-19, this tendency will be accelerated. The students are working in group of 2 for initial research about various co-working living spaces in the fall. They extracted the key concept from the research and turned it into the essay in the studio publication. They continued to work as a group designing the pragmatic ecosystem throughout the winter, and then work individually for the design of the building for the final. This year, the studio is divided into 2 groups. First group is working on the site in Nihonbashi, Tokyo, and other is working on the site in Los Angeles. Unique characteristic of Workhouse Studio is that instead of responding to existing sets of conditions, the students are asked to come up with a design of the ecosystem, creates the unique condition, and produce its own reality for their projects through entrepreneurial approach. Students need to show how the ecosystem functions, prove its sustainability, and show how it withstands the real condition of the world. Students do this by proposing and designing the business plan for their project. This approach might be seen as a stretch from traditional role of architecture, but maybe there are the new sets of qualities necessary for architects in the era when the space is so flux and unstable.
Pool House, a vehicle for participatory ownership.
California is in the midst of a severe housing shortage. Southern California alone has an estimated housing deficit of 800,000 units. To address this deficit, California's legislature passed State Assembly Bill 68, which allows all SFRs to add auxiliary dwelling units, known as ADUs, to the property. These units typically reside in the rear of the lot. and are allowed to be as large as 1,200 square feet. With this additional new dwelling place, the backyard is transformed from private domain to semi-public shared space. Integral to our design approach is an understanding of a typical suburban community in Los Angeles, where lots are adjacent to each other and are often separated by a fence. Eschewing the age-old adage, good fences make good neighbors, we intend to tear down barriers and create micro-communities. The configuration of these communities can take many forms, with alternative layouts producing alternative sorts of social interaction. Guiding these micro-communities is the idea of participatory ownership, wherein maintaining the semi-public shared space rests on both homeowners and tenants. Pool House reaches out to the homeowners and offers to build them a secondary unit. Pool House puts up all the cost, handles the architecture, construction, and leasing. In return, Pool House receives a 10-year lease on the ADU, which allows it to sublet the ADU for a profit. During the 10-year lease, Pool House also makes monthly payments to homeowners for 10% of collected revenue. At the end of the 10-year lease, the homeowner keeps the secondary unit and can choose if they would like to retain Pool House as a property manager.
Reimagining the typical Los Angeles housing block. Los Angeles, for all of its architectural variety, still retains certain uniform qualities. Notably, the city block is one such feature. In West Adams, the typical block is comprised of an array of homes that abut one another on the sides and rear of the lot, and are otherwise separated by a two-way road. Tract 1446 is one such typical block, and will serve as the basis for the forthcoming speculation and proposal. By overlaying the building code distilled by Assembly Bill 68, we can begin to understand the potential for the individual lot, clusters of lots, and the block at large. We start by identifying the existing non-primary structures, which mostly comprise detached garages constructed in the 1950s. Imagining a clean slate, we apply an ADU setback analysis of 10 feet from any existing structures and 4 feet from the sides and rear of the lot, yielding a residual landmass of 27,000 square feet of developable land and an additional 29,000 square feet to be devoted to a new public thoroughfare. The result is the inversion of the typical city block, such that community life is centered along what had been the rear of the lot. Conscious of Los Angeles' eclectic housing aesthetics, this proposal takes aim at studying and reinterpreting many of the city's iconic styles, albeit modified for affordability and rapid production. Along with 5 unique floor plans, ranging from 1-bed, 1-bath single units to 2-bed, 1-bath adjoined townhouses, this proposal also reimagines 5 specific styles: International, Craftsman, Storybook, Colonial, and Spanish Revival. A specific element from each housing style is adapted to be generated from standard structural 1 plywood that can be rapidly produced using CNC technology. In that these elements are formed from 2-dimensional cut paths and joined by interlocking slots, the result is not a one-to-one replication of existing styles, but an approximation that signals the past while broadcasting the future, embracing a new sort of pixelated historicism. With the statutory height limit of 16 feet for 2 or more units on a lot, our strategy deploys elevational changes as a means of providing adequate overhead space on each floor. By creating a 4-foot depression in the ground, we subvert the height limit to allow for comfortable 20-foot 2-story dwellings. Additionally, we leverage this depression in the ground as part of a larger landscape and irrigation scheme that tethers together these otherwise discrete units. The elevation change is treated as a native plant rain garden, a natural means of removing pollutants from rain runoff and providing new habitat for local flora and fauna. The result of these actions is the production of a new community paradigm nestled within an old one. New housing stock gives way to more affordable prices. Smaller units facilitate the integration of different socioeconomic backgrounds. Rapid prototyping brings construction costs down while preserving the character of Los Angeles. A shared landscape builds community, recycles water, and offers much-needed green space. In conjunction, these speculations collide to produce a more equitable and sustainable vision of LA, achievable within every typical housing block.
Pool House, the Catalog 2020. The catalog creates a product for living. The catalog addresses the pool house block, yard, alley, house, and components. The back house aims to address an increasing idea surrounding the live-work house. The pool house catalog leverages architectural components to produce dynamic interaction between front and back houses throughout the neighborhood. Through participatory ownership, Pool House will facilitate a system of micro-landscapes to support this community of live-work housing. The Block. Located in the southwest corner of West Adams, the block is near the Expo line. This investigation examines the city block with an alley. Pool House will start as one house and phase into a network of backyard communal spaces that superimpose a grid of houses along the alley, creating a new frontage of pedestrian movement. The project works on two scales simultaneously, a city scale and a domestic scale. The alley is activated by utilizing the 4-foot setback as parklets. Pool House sets up a network of micro-landscapes to create a harmonious relationship between neighbors. The Pool House yard and alley break shared outdoor spaces into components. This will continue the grid into the yard, creating a system of connected back and front houses. Pool House, aiding in the transformation, will work with the city and the neighborhood to schedule times for garbage, delivery, and community events that these new civic spaces have the capacity to explore. Now that the system of micro-landscapes is structured along the alley, the new Pool House houses will be able to plug into a system within the community at large. The Pool House house. There are 4 housing typologies: the single unit 2-story, the 2-unit, and the micro-unit, each with its own limitation of space, creating 4 different shells. The single-family resident owner will choose the shell they want to componentize and work with Pool House to design the house to fit within the network. The house can be broken into 4x8 and 8x8 components, atomizing the house into interchangeable architectural elements. The components respond to the plan division, resulting in different arrangements of windows, doors, and other accessories. As the COVID-19 pandemic has drastically altered our current living and working environments, it has also pushed us to pursue what it means to both work and live in the same space. The space of the house can be divided into the core, which includes bathroom, kitchen, laundry, and storage, and fixed living including bedrooms and private offices, and flexible living containing living room, dining, office, and work. Within each unit, the core can shift to allow for a separation between live and work, or can be used to separate flexible and fixed living. 2-story or lofted spaces allow for the first floor to be fixed living and the second floor to be flexible living, or vice versa. Each unit is designed keeping in mind the potential of indoor-outdoor living. The back house acts not only as a space for prospective tenants to rent, but also is flexible enough for that tenant to both live and work. Through the communal amenity yard and civic components, Pool House is creating a network within the community to help each other thrive both at home and for leisure, as well as professionally and at the office.
Welcome to Polymix. Polymix is a philosophy that responds to the trend of buildings designed as increasingly complex polyprogrammatic containers. Polymix recognizes that by combining many programs, people, and industries, a dynamic equilibrium is produced, creating new value by increasing interaction and exchange. We offer Polymix as a solution to Japan's challenge of the super-aging population. The strengths of the super-aging population can activate our site in Nihonbashi. We see an opportunity to mix home, work, and life science innovation to create a symbiotic super-age community. Our site is located in the heart of Tokyo, in the historic district of Nihonbashi. Our site is located in an optimal position to bridge the life sciences to the Nihonbashi community. To the north of our site is the Life Sciences District, which includes Mitsui Fudosan's Link J facilities, which is laboratory and co-working space that supports the growth of Nihonbashi Life Sciences. To the south of our site is Mitsui Fudosan's future waterfront redevelopment project, which plans to bury the Shuto Expressway beneath the Nihonbashi River to resurrect a historic water-centric community of exchange. Additionally, an international life sciences hub is to be constructed as part of this redevelopment. Polymix draws together these powerful adjacencies into a dynamic equilibrium on site, working to pair the complex Nihonbashi ecology with the strengths of the super-aging population. Per the zoning requirements and Mitsui provided standards, a tower with 20% commercial and public space, 70% office, and 10% residential or hotel is the optimal development for our site. To fulfill the goals of Polymix, we propose an increased amount of super-age housing that works to activate the tower as a dynamic polyprogrammatic equilibrium. To achieve this vision, the design of Polymix is driven by a polyprogrammatic ecology of social and economic exchange. What's left for Polymix is to develop the architectural typology that best supports this dynamic equilibrium of interaction and exchange. Polymix is influenced by research into many competitive cases of unique mixed-use developments. International House by 3Space is a converted government building that creates a dynamic ecosystem of tenants that support each other socially and economically through a buy-give relationship. Polymix is set to reach beyond these unique examples of mixed-use buildings and test the limits of architecture that is designed for polyprogrammatic interaction. Nihonbashi has always served as a stage for innovation. Polymix is its next step into the future.
Enforcing the concept of our Polymix ecology diagram. This project proposes a new building typology that challenges the typical programmatical hierarchy of the mid-rise tower. Rather than extruding another stacked high-rise tower in the Nihonbashi district of Tokyo, the project is meant to be seen and understood as an aggregation of spaces organized around the two cores of the building. The juxtaposition of programs within the building lends itself to a new type of interactivity within a mid-rise tower. Work and home are in a constant symbiosis within the building, enhancing the quality of living of the super-age community and encouraging collaboration between residents and tenants.
Superslab, the architectural mechanism of a thickened slab functioning as super-age housing, or a think lab for the super-age lifestyle that promotes social interaction and builds new value. We begin with the typical slab construction. Notice that the interaction between floors is limited. By enlarging the slab, inserting super-age housing into the interstitial space, and increasing the floor height to allow deeper daylighting, there emerges opportunities to carve new shared spaces into the super slab. This begins to influence the activity and behavior of the programs above and below the super slab. ultimately creating a unique form of mixed-use tower that capitalizes on mutual benefit. The building's massing is developed by utilizing the superslab mechanism as a bridge for the diverse relationships identified in the programmatic ecology. This creates a striated section where several residential superslabs intersect traditional mixed-use spaces. The ground floor invites the public into the building, providing retail space that adds a warm, louvered atmosphere to Nihonbashi's streetscapes. On the third level, we encounter the first super slab sandwiched in between retail and office space. Each four-person unit is connected to semi-private perimeter circulation and also opens inward to a public interior atrium. This allows the super-age tenants to access many types of social exchange, whether it be a brief hello in the corridor or a view of the bustling activity above and below. On the 8th level, the super slab pairs a super-age work-live space with the semi-public perimeter circulation. This promotes collaboration between tenants and businesses focused on innovation for the super-age lifestyle. In the remaining super slabs, the semi-private perimeter thickens to provide public courtyards for businesses or hotel amenities to share. These spaces provide unique sky courtyards that promote interaction and provide a pleasant environment for the users and tenants of the building. Super slab is a unique opportunity to provide a new lifestyle for the super-aging population, one that decreases social isolation, builds a new value for the super-agers, and provides a landmark building for Nihonbashi's redevelopment.
This year in the entertainment studio has revolved largely around the contemporary frictions between new technologies, media, and culture. We use story as a device to connect technological developments with their inevitable impacts on social, spatial, and societal structures. The work is varied, It's optimistic, it's light, it's deep. It's often a meditation. They're all investigations.
Our provocations all examine the collective questions of identity, of community, of our place in the world, in our city, in our time. Questions that today, in June 2020, are more relevant and in question than ever. Neha, Akshara and Aishwarya animate plastic waste in their film titled Forever, to deliver a powerful treatise on our rampant affluenza, offering an alternative to our current anthropocentric trajectory.
UC Reshi and Qingyang's film titled Best Before asks if your value to society was determined by a best before date and you were about to expire, how far would you go to extend yourself?
Gestimani, Yanrong and Alekya are investigators and narrators of a missing persons case. They follow a police detective with her AI analyst and in the process reveal a story of trust, one that encounters the uncanny tensions that arise when forced to choose between the fallibility of memory and witness testimony, pitted against cold, hard forensic evidence.
Liang, Rohan, and Yueshuan create the slow, transformative visuals in their piece called Ecotechnium of a world arrived at when technology's evolutionary acceleration hits the inevitable limits of its growth curve, the exact moment when biology intervenes.
Akash and Negin design a world in which algorithms are our gods, managing the ebb and flow of economies and resources while giving life through the global orchestration of the weather.
Chansu, Tianyi, and Shanrui design the worlds and interaction of an online multiplayer game called Innermost, one in which we experience networked collective terraforming, community, and collaboration, all leading us to construct our real-world identity as we simultaneously cultivate the territories of our planet. The projects in the studio are speculations on the stranger-than-fiction realities that we all inhabit every day. We mine these for innovative forms of visual storytelling to create uncanny stories set in the spaces and cities of our real fiction times.
Incognito is a film that uses a criminal investigation as a medium to explore how different types of memories are interconnected or pitted against each other. The case we follow is examined by a human detective in collaboration with an AI analyst. In our real world, the increasing abilities of AI systems and documentation technologies allow for 2.5 quintillion bytes of data to be generated daily, even at obscure locations.
As humans, we tend to gravitate towards stories as opposed to cold facts, which often lead to tensions when these forms of evidence contradict one another. When looking at one event, the number of narratives that record it is dependent on the different memories associated with it. Whether they are sworn testimonies, online data, or algorithmic classifiers, we start to notice the contradictions among those, and we begin to wonder, which one is more trustworthy? How does bias affect us?
When we look at objects isolated from context, like an evidence board, to construct a narrative, we interpolate. We use story and invention to connect the dots. And these narratives are constantly infiltrated with our biases and interpretations. Incognito challenges the idea of objective or infallible memories and suggests that memory is not a remembering of the past. It is a creative act that weaves together an experience and an environment with its associated senses and emotions.
We have all been in this situation where we speak to our cars, give them agency, or beg them to keep going just till we reach the gas station, or maybe even name them. We stand in front of the vending machine and we get this immense gratitude when we get our bag of chips. We are always scared of these revengeful machines. We assign personhood to non-human bodies. A woman married a tree, another married the Eiffel Tower. But on a broader ecological scale, communities have advocated for giving citizenship to reefs or other natural entities like lakes, rivers, mountains to protect them, to give them agency, and in hopes that personhood will encourage pro-environmental behavior. It's bizarre, yet so common, our relation with these inanimate bodies in this ever-increasing affluenza, the world full of objects. It stays unacknowledged, but we do have these emotions of love, empathy, anger, and strength towards inanimate bodies.
Being storytellers, we saw this opportunity to think about plastic in a different way and to place it in a world of our own. We used form, behavior, gesture, and sound to create compelling characters. Plastic has been prevalent with us over decades. In our story, plastic is not a much maligned victim or a neglected creature who's meant to serve us or disowned after its use, but here it flocks together where it challenges our own world and it's on its way to create its own. So here's our journey, where plastic is now on a mission.
In each narrative instance of explicit anthropomorphism, we associate and draw on gestural as well as emotive characteristics to bring out the intangible: love, empathy, guilt, anger, and strength. Our perception of plastic is about to change. What once was forever is about to be over.
Hi, my name is Martha Criley, and this is my project for On Force and Form, our one-year research studio with Heather Roberge. This project explores spatial variety within seriality. By working with repeated modules, a wide variety of spaces and configurations are generated. Structure and roof modules generate two spatial orders, the former orthogonal and the latter diagonal. Louis Kahn often divided program into a binary of servant and served spaces, with structure and servant spaces often commingled. He showed that if you expand structure sufficiently, it can become programmed poche and help establish a relationship between support program and occupiable space. For example, the tectonic system at the Yale Center for British Art also serves as mechanical space, while at Trenton Bathhouse, the expanded structure contains support program. For my project, the structural module is a 72-foot square with columns placed in each corner. Instead of occupying the minimum space required to support the roof, each column expands to a different size, creating occupiable poche space within and forming a dynamic spatial bay. There are a total of 5 structural modules, with poche columns ranging in size from 1.5 foot square to 24 foot square, allowing for a range of functions from those that are purely structural to forming occupiable spaces of varying scales. As the modules aggregate to create the field of the market hall, adjacent columns combine to create entirely new figures. The original column module dissolves, and new complex clusters are formed. My proposal for a market in Hollywood demonstrates that poche does not need to maintain Kahn's strict binary and can instead form a bistable relationship. It uses the shape of the poche and its containment of the program to organize interactions. At times, the poche object can act as a corner and defer to the market space, or the poche object can become the focus. Unlike Kahn, the space is not always the figure. The roof of the market utilizes the same 72-foot column spacing. The roof planes are lifted above the poche column figures, supported by thinner columns to add lightness to the structure, similar to Kahn's Trenton Bathhouse. There are 2 roof modules based on permutations of a butterfly roof. Aggregating these modules allows light to permeate into the space from one direction, producing dual lighting effects and porosities. The proposed market occupies a large site, with commercial zoning to the north and east, and single-family zoning to the south and west. The program combines elements of an open-air market, as well as a town hall. The site elevation shifts by 1 level, with the north being 15 feet higher than the south. Consequently, visitors enter the site on the first floor on the south, and on the second level from the north. The plans are organized with the town hall primarily placed along the north and east commercial-facing edges of the site. In plan, the column aggregations create dynamic bistability with the spaces they define. Bistability occurs when a system has multiple stable states or perceptions. Here, the column aggregations sometimes become objects with the surrounding space acting as the field, while at other times the space becomes figural and the aggregations are the background. In contrast to the orthogonal column grid, the butterfly roof is organized along a diagonal grain. This reinforces the reading of the columns as independent figures within a field, rather than dropping into the background as an abstract series. The grain of the roof encourages non-orthogonal movement through the market, which is further encouraged by strategic placement of column modules in program. Moving sectionally, the roof can be read as a series of small discontinuous panels or as long continuous planes. From the southwest, the roof appears continuous. From the northeast, the discontinuities are revealed. These dual readings create different effects within the market. The discontinuities help with daylighting and climate control. The north-facing openings allow sunlight into the space, while shading visitors from harsh light and heat. The roof also helps orient visitors by providing different experiences depending on orientation. Through the layering of multiple hierarchies, the market produces non-hierarchy. The visitor does not defer to a single imposed order. Through bistability and duality, many forms of occupation unfold. Thanks for listening, and I hope you can join our discussion.
The first mountains in Los Angeles were formed by the Earth. Tectonic plates moved and collided, forcing the surface upwards. The second mountains were created by man and machine manipulation. The land was cut, filled, and graded in order to create more land. 2050 AD. Los Angeles' iconic hills are home to some of the deadliest wildfires. Insurance is no longer available and most people must move. Luxurious hilltop living is Los Angeles' modus operandi, a result of multiple land transformations and wealth. The plot you see before you is one such example in Beverly Hills. Once listed at $1 billion, was recently sold for only $100,000 due to its high risk. However, there are still many beautiful homes that dot the Los Angeles hills. For instance, the famous case study homes that are known for the Californian experience of seamlessly blending their interiors with the beautiful exterior landscape. This kind of lifestyle is no longer viable due in large part to the increasingly periodic and catastrophic wildfires. Our story is not about trying to return to nature as we know it, but creating a new way to live with these fires. Already, climate change has begun to create deep impacts, which has a direct relationship to the areas projected to experience greater and more devastating wildfires. In fact, in 2019 alone, the amount of money lost in real estate to these fires has been to a tune of a staggering $80 billion. Research shows that the spread of these wildfires is also linked to topography. Hillside slopes are directly proportional to the intensity of the spread of the fire. Of these hills, canyons and valleys are the most dangerous. Single-axis roads with no escape routes and steep slopes caused by construction puts these residents at the greatest risk.
Third mountain alters the slope of hillsides to stem the spread of fire. The third mountain is duly created by cotton field, taking land from these mountains in order to reduce the slope and extending the excavated earth as fingers into urban areas. Bulldozers are used to carry soil, trees, and other landscape elements from the original mountain down to the flatlands to be used as new building and landscape material. It's as if the first mountain are finding themselves a new way of expression through the third mountain. The finger connects with the city along roads and incorporating the existing built components like metro lines and unused parking lots to create a new urban experience for Los Angeles. In these diagrams, you can see the cotton field technique used to create the fingers. The slopes are modified to a 50% fire belt, and in order to stabilize these new slopes, a concrete graded retaining wall with fire-resistant landscaping is built.
The earth that is brought down is used to create a new mass plan. It takes the form of rammed earth architecture strategically inserted in the existing urban fabric, a sustainable building material. This process ensures that actual building material need not to be transported from far-off places. Mountain soil from the valleys is regarded and collected. It is then distributed as a new grade that is overlaid over the street. This grade is then distorted and modulated to respect existing landmarks. In this side of West Hollywood, the grid conforms around historical landmarks like Sunset Strip, preservation landmarks, and roads with high traffic.
In 2050, the air quality is much worse, and the outdoors aren't the ideal place to enjoy the city. The city has transformed. Life in 2050 is all about learning to live alongside wildfires and its consequences. The third mountain manifests itself in Earth as a new materiality, as a construction material and landscape element. We leave the old days glamour in the mountains behind and create new Los Angeles glamour down in the flatlines, where we are required to spend more time in controlled and covered environments. A new story of living indoors in artificial nature begins here. Our proposal includes two scales of architecture, a radical landscape and housing community created having largely interior-based spaces.
The houses in the settlement follow the same zoning of single-family houses that is characteristic of Los Angeles, while the radical landscape creates larger spaces within that can be used for a range of activities. Circulation begins with the main pedestrian path from the master plan and then branches out into private roads for the houses, creating house blocks. The courtyards are designed to provide privacy while maintaining visual communication. The round earth architecture follows the general slope of the land. Covered and semi-covered walking paths through and through landscape views, and small social spaces are unique characteristics of the complex. They are the result of the Third Mountain's architectural method and material.
The radical landscape comprises public buildings that can be used for various purposes. It is stepped from Sunset Avenue to Hollywood Drive with Ramdar's retaining walls. A combination of this landformed self and deliberately created artificial nature is the new aesthetics that we envision. Along the side, the architecture is embedded into the scalloped earth form. A combination of underground and open-to-sky areas creates a new experience for interacting with nature in 2050.
If the first mountains of Los Angeles were formed naturally, and the second by post-war clearance and demolition of mountaintops, then the third mountain synthesizes nature and artifice into an architecture made up entirely of the materiality of land. It embraces its artificiality in the urbanscapes. The first mountain has found itself transported and transformed for an indoor life in 2050 LA, rising to the challenge of new age climate threats.
Hello, we are group, home address 105 110 intersection. The car culture in California has been a big part in creating the current image of Los Angeles. Especially the introduction of the freeway system in the 1940s made the freeway itself an iconic feature affecting all criteria from cultural to political parts of LA. We can look into the entertainment industry's representations such as Tupac and Snoop Dogg driving through LA, 1995 film Heat by Michael Mann, and the 2016 film La La Land. This monumental element of LA developed its presence, and now it is looking towards a new change. As current society is facing problems such as increasing land value and scarcity, freeway makes it a new possibility where it can be utilized not only for transportation, but in multiple ways to solve these dilemmas. The reliability of the freeway system for transportation will decrease as we've seen occasions like the Carmageddon, where the 405 has been shut down and given Angelinos a break from continuous driving. By understanding the freeway as given land, this new prototype for development recommends modifying the single-use transportation system into multi-use infrastructure with permanent and temporary mobile architecture spread across the freeway system intersections, simultaneously responding to land scarcity and providing new ground for LA 2050. This project interprets the freeway as developable land, and envisioning 2050 LA, this found land is utilized as a node for urban development. As one of Rainer Bennett's four ecologies of LA, Los Angeles freeway system is notable for being the primary infrastructure for public life in the city. This new prototype for development creates nodes of architecture spread across the freeway system's intersections as a response to land scarcity and vision plan for urban life in LA 2050. The current freeway system going through LA County is taking up the area equal to 3 times the area of downtown Los Angeles. The freeway went through massive land transformation on the process of construction. With the scale of the past construction of the freeway in mind, there is an opportunity in freeway's embodied energy as given land for the future urban development. As the firm concrete structure resembled the modern-day construction system in America, we decided to use the freeway structure as a base for new urban development in 2050, which is also an economical choice.
We chose Harbor intersection as our site since it is one of the most interesting and complex intersections in Los Angeles. We started with analyzing the existing structure and found that, apart from the embodied energy, the beauty of the freeway curves are also the things that we should preserve. So we used the twisting geometry to show the rhythm of the freeway. And this is a part we zoomed into architectural scale because this part is complex enough to cover most situations. Since we assume freeway as aligned, the way we transform the line is to hang artificial line under the existing structure. From bottom to top, the artificial line including the artificial landscape, freeway surface, and the landscape on the rooftop. Each layers are connected by the ramp between them. Since we add new burden on the old structure, to make the new structure light and economical, the overall structural strategy we use is suspension. In this system, here is a hierarchy of temporality and stability. The most prominent part is the original freeway structure, which supports the whole new structure. And the semi-permanent part is the new truss and artificial lines suspended under the freeway. and the most mobile and temporary part is the rail system and mobile units hanging under the truss and the slabs.
We have reached an area where the car, the pedestrian, and architecture can work together to transform what was once a single-use infrastructure to a multifaceted system. Both fixed and temporary units glide across the rail system to transport programs to different areas of the freeway urbanism. Outdoor dining, outdoor gyms, and small commercial shops all activate the space to provide all the amenities any typical resident will need. Ramps provide access to the landscape below the freeway as well as to roof gardens, while autonomous cars navigate their way seamlessly through the linear structure, providing continuous transportation without interruption.
The mobile units are designed by the concept of customized personal space. The components of units are prefabricated and delivered to the assembly platform inside the building. After assembly, the units will be transported by an automatic rail system. The unit types can be categorized according to programs and temporality. We developed living units for long-term stay as a complete apartment, or shorter-term stay as RV carports, or even shorter-term stay like sleeping capsules, and units for other purposes like gaming space and meeting rooms. The programs inside the linear mass are organized by a hierarchy of public and private, with public programs in the middle and residential area at the end. The intersection area has the most public programs. The intersection areas create volume appropriate for different architecture programs, such as manufacturing areas for unit assembly, compact parking, commercial programs, and public space.
The studio between architecture takes as its main concern the capacity of the section to move beyond the serial stack and instead to develop complex spatial propositions for nesting together a parking garage and a gym. In his article, Successive Architecture, Preston Scott Cohen writes, "Gridiron urbanization led to what is still to this day the most pervasive governing spatial principle of architecture, vertical succession, the unartistically considered non-hierarchical piling of discrete horizontal slabs of space, one atop the other. Vertical succession relegates the architect's role to designing facades and interior surfaces. This dissolution of sectional hierarchy and the subsequent relegation of architecture to a tinkering at the edges points to a series of problems that are at the heart of this first-year core studio. Namely, what can a section do, and what, if any, is its relationship to the elevation? In this studio, we look to the section as a place of great intensity that could dislodge expected relations between parts, as well as expose and choreograph alternative sequences and organizations of view and action. With this in mind, we focused on the section's generative orientation in architecture, rather than strictly seeing it as a post facto analytical instrument. In an effort to immediately challenge and interrogate the limitations of the stack, we began the studio by engaging a parking garage as an incitement for the development of a sectionally charged proposal, paying particular attention to 4 parking types: straight ramps, ramp floors, split level, and helical ramps. While at first glance the organization and circulation of cars in a parking garage may seem a banal and burdensome coordination of metrics, turning radii, numerical capacity, structural spacing, the arrangement of cars offers an immediate engagement with sectional motivations. In this sense, the parking garage is understood as a kind of sectional ready-made, preloaded with stubborn logics and formal resistance, against which an architectural proposition could be forwarded. In lieu of a precedent, we endeavored to understand and tame the highly specialized workings of parking garage structures and their discrete typologies, finding that once the basic parameters of parking were understood, a great range of possibilities became apparent in the choreography of ramps, slabs, stacks, splits, and spirals. At a large scale, parking provides a coarse sectional strategy that dislodges the serial flat plane as a given datum of a building while remaining adherent to the necessities of movement and use. It is these qualities of the parking garage, its prescriptive limitations as well as its potential exuberances, that we imagined as the fraught datum against which a second set of concerns might take root. As architecture is rarely allegiant to a single set of concerns, the forces that motivate the arrangement of spaces are always multiple and rarely straightforwardly resolvable. In part 2 of the studio, we introduced a secondary set of programs, which operate at a different sectional measure, that of the recreational gym, with its specifications for wet and dry zones, small and large activities, as well as its rituals of use. Rather than consider these two programs as merely coexisting side by side or above and below, we imagined an opportunistic intermingling of the two. This expanded set of considerations of scale, volume, organization, and movement was interpreted in each proposal as complementary, oppositional, or otherwise with the initial parking structure, and necessitated an architectural proposal that could manage both propinquity and juxtaposition. As the demands of the brief required an extended distribution of parking and gym in section, so too does each proposal require an approach to continuities and discontinuities in sequence and movement. That is to say, a considerable amount of pressure was placed on developing a strategy of organization, and then to develop a strategy of circulation that could advance the spatial ambitions of each project while establishing coherence and legibility for use. Finally, in part 3, the internal struggle of the constituent parts within came to bear on the elevation. Here the section's hidden nature, its knowability revealed only through the projection of an abstract cut, helped us position the range of operations afforded by the outward-facing and immediately available elevation. That is, just as the section cut reveals, the elevation conceals. In the end, the elevation is what we see, the outermost surface of an enclosure, whether inside or out, its insistent visibility masking whatever ingenuity the section might have lying within. Working on a tight infill lot in downtown LA, the proposals finally confront the regulating lines of the city, setting the internal workings of the building into tension with the exterior and provoking a discussion on insides and outsides, their modes of production and reception, as well as their respective allegiances. Between what is revealed and concealed, what is read and what is experienced, this studio asks how working in section differs from other ways of seeing architecture, what it makes available and by what means, and how we might consider the section's connection to what is finally revealed at the elevation.
This project considers the parking garage to be one thing, continuous, repetitive circulation, and the gym to be many things, a collection of independent, programmatic fragments. By breaking both garage and gym into fragments that are folded into continuous circulation, this project seeks to produce an experience of continuity within an image of discontinuity. The garage is organized as a split-level system which is broken into irregular, misaligned fragments in order to create space for the nesting of multiple gyms. These gyms are organized as independent entities and are subdivided further according to the programmatic specificities of each. The resultant collection of garage and gym fragments are intermixed to make ambiguous the differences between the two, producing 3 coarse, autonomous building fragments stitched together by a continuous exteriorized circulation that navigates the fissure between them while indexing the continuity of the garage. In section, a different type of continuity is implied as an internal staple stair connects a program within each gym. In elevation, the reading is different, as the garage acts as the stitch that stabilizes and binds 3 gyms together. The layering of circulation systems brings forth a continuity that can be read in the film frames of plan. Pedestrian and vehicle both enter from the west and circulate along the southern edge, wrapping inward and back outward to connect the separate entries of the 3 autonomous buildings, each of which is stapled internally with its own independent stair. And while these layers of continuity are visible in plan, they are less legible in section, which is agitated, expressive, and finely fragmented to address the multivalent requirements of a dynamic and heterogeneous gym. Elevation, conversely, is understated, suppressive, and coarse, operating as an organizational device for producing coherence, clarity, and continuity between gym and garage. This binary is undone, however, as section appears in elevation, superimposing light, shadow, and fissure to animate an otherwise blank veil. Likewise, elevation wraps inward to manifest in section as multiple layers of enclosure, selectively masking, blinding, and ordering the disorder. This layering of light, shadow, enclosure, and circulation produces a reciprocity between section and elevation, whereby their literal descriptions collapse into a hybrid construct that allows one to occupy elevation and experience its continuity inside of a discontinuous section. In this reciprocity exists a codependence of garage and gym, of elevation and section, of one and many, in which each amplifies and undoes the other to reconsider the binary that the project sets up. In doing so, this project challenges the approach that positions the one against the other and instead argues for the productive potential that exists in the superimposition of the layers between.
This project is interested in blurring the reading between gym and parking by using the parking unit as an organizational module to the gym for the building as a whole. As program is packed, stacked, and articulated, so too the distinction between section and elevation is blurred. This project takes a ramped floor parking garage and explores how the floor plates can be expanded and contracted due to the rotation of parking stalls. It understands the parking stall as an elastic unit that through its orientation can expand and contract the overall structure and organization of the garage and gym. As the angle of rotation of a parking stall decreases, the overall width does as well, creating space for alternate program. It is into these spaces and the spaces of the parking stall the gym program can be inserted. Gym program takes the parking stall as an organizational module and through tight scalar packing creates new forms and organization. The stitching together of rotated parking stalls creates openings in plan that become fissures in section. Once gym program is introduced into plan, the fissures multiply and offer moments at which the section can be experienced. This project looks at how program operates on a spectrum of introverted versus extroverted activities and compares how that affects whether a space is enclosed or exposed. A figure ground study looked at the impact that stacked plans can have on section as fissures between program and parking are tracked through the building. The mapping reveals how parking and gym program have the same form. Circulation for cars wrap around the gym program, and as parking stalls are broken up by vertical dividing walls, they are read as having more volumetric significance than a standard parking slab would convey. Gym circulation is situated between the levels of the garage, taking advantage of the tight stacking that the parking and program modules create. The central vertical core serves primarily extroverted program, while the paths that depart from it are for introverted program. Unrolling the pedestrian paths disorients the perception of tight scalar packing, but reveals the relationship between program and circulation. It shows that large, extroverted program tends to be located near the center of gravity, while smaller, introverted program is pushed to a more periphery position. As one enters the garage, they are immediately confronted with how parking stalls are pushed out of the way by large programmatic pieces. On some levels, the gym is subsumed inward so that program is held within garage circulation and situated within the grid of parking stalls. Other levels are devoted solely to parking, with gym program placed above and below. As large extroverted program is inserted into the garage, car circulation is forced to bend around the program, placing program at a higher level of importance than the car. Pedestrian circulation is treated in the same manner as it bends around program pieces and becomes the connective tissue between different activities. Fissures are slotted between program and parking and create a visual connection between different levels. It is at these moments that it is possible to experience and internalize the collision of the program and impact of the planimetric cinching. As fissures span from level to level, a visual connection is created while limiting the understanding of section by other senses. The fissures create moments of peace within the gym, while at other times become filled with the cacophony typical of a traditional gym floor. Section reveals the tight stacking of plans and program, and collision of tightly packed modules is visible through the fissures between levels. The garage circulation shifts in plan to accommodate gym program, and the hierarchical relationship between program and circulation is emphasized. The distinction between parking and program module begins to disappear, and the separation between gym and garage becomes blurred. Through the cellular organization, the language of section is brought to the elevation, and section creates elevation, rendering the difference between the two obsolete. As program wraps garage, the garage circulation remains obvious, while the parking stalls are subsumed by the gym, blurring the boundary between two previously distinct elements of the building. The experience on the exterior is analogous to that on the interior, with the visitor constantly confronted by the scalar packing and stacking of parking and program modules. In this project, the elevation subverts the traditional inward-facing nature of the Ramplan, such that the interior and exterior elevations read as having equal importance and form, and the section and elevation become the same.
My name is Emily Sherman, and my project is about the flicker effect. The flicker effect of the single image reveals the accumulation of frames. This quote is taken from Scott Cohen's article, Successive Architecture, where he compares the method of architectural extrusion to Andy Warhol's 1963 film, Sleep. Cohen argues that extruded form creates a similar flicker effect to that of the film. However, I would argue that to achieve Warhol's flicker, a more nuanced method is necessary. In my project, as we move from elevation or edge into the central core of the building, it is only through the space of projection between elevation and section that the nuances of the flicker effect can be experienced. Rather than extrude one form as Cohen articulated, I created a flicker using 4 different ordering systems that collide in the center. The result is not only a flicker in plan, but elevation and section as well. The role of figuration in elevation is to abstract the interior organization and reading of the section. It is here as you move from elevation through section into the building and back out that the flicker effect is experienced. Spaces closest to the edge retain a similar language as the elevation, but as the 4 ordering systems move in on each other, the flicker effect is achieved. Program is broken up into smaller discrete short-term programs near the base and larger long-term programs near the top. All zones share equal access to a locker room located in the center of the building. 3 different circulation types code the sequence of occupation, connecting the 4 different zones to one another. A medium-sized semi-exterior path connects individual discrete programs. A small semi-enclosed path connects medium-sized programs, and the large, fully enclosed path connects the upper, larger programmatic zones. In plan, the flicker effect is facilitated by a split-level parking organization. Program and parking flicker from side to side as you move your way up the building. The central axis shifts or flickers halfway up, giving way for more programmable space and more nuance in section. In my project, elevation is an indexical device which both brings the section to the facade while simultaneously confounding it. Thank you.
This project is about in-between space. It begins with the concept of liminal space, which I understand as a spatial compression between programs, materiality, interiority, and exteriority. My understanding of liminal space also includes an idea of buildings within a building. Redefining the boundary between inside and outside further strengthens the concept of liminal space, since now there's another layer of ambiguity between inside and outside. The program layout started with a simple overlap between the parking and the gym, which then subdivided into general programs, web programs, and dry programs. Then all 3 gym programs are connected at different elevations to create spatial continuity. Lastly, these programs are then rearranged in an ascending loop, which creates various sectional conditions. As a result, the parking program is essentially shaped and nested in between different types of gym programs. Here is the vehicular circulation, indicating a two-way entrance at the front of the building. And then there are two circulation systems for people walking inside the building. The first one is concealed and direct, while the second one is exposed and meandering. The front elevation of the building reveals more gym programs than the parking, while the back elevation of the building reveals more repetitive parking slabs. The building sections demonstrate that people constantly negotiate different in-between conditions as they move through the building. Visitors continually move between different materiality and interiority or exteriority, sometimes cutting through different programs to get to other programs. Sometimes they would experience different spatial environmental conditions when they're doing the same exercise. The ground floor plan shows a connection between two short sides of the building, providing an easy access for incoming vehicles. And all the plans are unique as they function differently in shaping the voids and parking. Consequently, the plans illustrate the idea of liminal space and building within the building. The unrolled elevation indexes the continuity of programs and voids on the elevation, and the unrolled section indicates the continuity of interiority of the programs. And here are two exterior movements. The first one shows the exteriority of the inside of the building, and the second one shows the exteriority of the outside of the building. Here's a closer look at 4 fragments of the building that host all of the gym programs. The first fragment, which is located at the lower back of the building, consists of the majority of the general programs, including lobby, office, and a cafe. Here's an image looking at 2 different spaces that split by circulation. The second fragment wraps around the central portion of the front of the building, holding most of the web programs, including a diving pool, a lap pool, and a sauna. And here's a shot of an in-between condition of 2 individual workout spaces. The third fragment at top rear of the building contains most of the outdoor gym programs that are mostly concealed but open to air. Here is an image of the outdoor yoga space. Last but not least, the fragment 4 mainly has large dry programs, such as climbing wall and a basketball court. Here's a shot taken at the basketball court with viewing decks all around and the skylights above. That's all. Thank you.